The sound doesn't change. That's the strange part. 1 second, the Japanese pilot is flying a routine intercept over the East China Sea. The next second, in the corner of his cockpit, a small light flips from green to red. Somewhere out there, a Chinese fighter has just switched on its fire control radar. It's the difference between someone looking at you and someone pointing a loaded gun at your chest. What you're about to hear is a dramatized reconstruction inspired by a real incident. Chinese carrier-based jets allegedly locking fire control radar on Japan's F-15s near Okinawa, and the joint Chinese-Russian bomber patrol that followed. Japan summoned China's ambassador, called the lock-ons dangerous and just short of pulling the trigger, while the US responded with B-52 flights alongside Japanese fighters. This is not a leak. It doesn't reveal classified data. But it is a realistic picture of how one radar click in the sky can redraw red lines on the ground. Our story begins over water, cold, gray water. An F-15J from Japan's Air Self-Defense Force slices through the sky southeast of Okinawa. Below the ocean is a steel sheet broken by white waves. Ahead, a Chinese carrier group is conducting drills, its flight deck sending fighters roaring into the air one after another. The Japanese pilot has done this kind of mission 100 times. Scramble, climb, get close enough to see the jets, the tail numbers, the weapons. Show the flag, log the details, go home. He can see the Chinese fighter he's been sent to monitor, a twin-engine jet banking lazily near the formation. He keeps his distance, maintaining his assigned position. Cameras on his jet quietly click, recording every pass. Then his threat warning receiver chirps. Just a single tone. The light changes. The Chinese jet has turned on fire control radar. In simple terms, that radar mode is used when you are preparing to shoot. It doesn't mean a missile has been launched. But it's the last step before that happens. Inside the Japanese cockpit, the pilot feels his heart rate jump. For years, Chinese aircraft have flown close, shadowed, cut across noses, even dropped flares near foreign jets. But locking fire control radar on another aircraft is different. It's universally understood as a hostile act, one step short of combat. He keys his radio. Radar illumination, I'm being painted with fire control. On the other end of the link, in an Air Defense Command Center back in Japan, controllers lean over their consoles. This isn't just an intercept anymore. It's an incident. They record the time, the bearing, the radar parameters. Every detail may end up on a minister's desk by morning. In the cockpit, the pilot fights the urge to yank the jet away. Training takes over. Maintain position, document, do not escalate. He takes photos, calls out the distance and relative position. Then, for a few seconds, the radar lock drops. He exhales, only for the warning to light up again. The Chinese fighter is toggling the fire control radar on and off like a finger flexing on a trigger. On the Chinese side, the pilot hears different orders. He's part of a larger show of force around Japan's southern islands. One that includes joint flights with Russian bombers and aggressive maneuvers near Japanese airspace. The message his commanders want to send is simple. Japan can't move without feeling Chinese pressure. In the air, at sea, and over Taiwan. He's been told to demonstrate capability, not to fire, not to start a war, just to remind the other side that he could. From his seat, flipping the radar mode switch feels like a gesture. Firm, controlled, technical. From the Japanese pilot's seat, it feels like standing in someone's crosshairs. Back in Tokyo, the story travels fast. By the time the F-15s land, upload their data, and the pilots file their reports, senior officers already know the key facts. A Chinese carrier-based fighter repeatedly locked fire control radar on a Japanese jet over international waters near Okinawa. Dangerous, deliberate, documented. In a secure room at the Defense Ministry, a small group gathers around a briefing slide that shows two icons, one Japanese, one Chinese, circling in tight patterns with colored lines marking each radar lock. The room is quiet. Everyone here remembers other incidents. Chinese ships locking radar on Japanese vessels a decade ago. Harassment of US, Australian, and Philippine aircraft in the South and East China Seas. But this one feels sharper. Because the political mood has changed, Japan now has a Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi, who has openly said that if China attacks Taiwan, Japan will not stand aside. Beijing hated those comments. It responded with angry statements, economic threats, and more military activity near Japan. So when Chinese jets now lock radar on Japanese fighters near Okinawa, it doesn't look like a one-off. It looks like a test. The defense minister listens to the briefing. He knows this will not stay inside the building. This is a dangerous act, he says. We treat fire control radar lock as one step short of pulling the trigger. We will protest, strongly. The next day, Japan summons China's ambassador. In the meeting room, the Japanese side lays out radar logs, timelines, and maps. This is unacceptable, they say. Your aircraft aimed fire control radar at ours. This creates a risk of accidental conflict. It crosses a line. The Chinese delegation denies it. They say their jets were exercising in a designated area. They accuse Japan of distorting facts and harassing training flights. State media later claims that Japan is hyping the incident to justify more military spending and closer ties with the US. On paper, it's a diplomatic dispute. In reality, the pilots who were locked on don't care about press statements. They care about the next time they go up there. Because the real danger isn't one radar click, it's the pattern. Chinese aircraft have been getting more aggressive not just with Japan, but with US, Australian, Canadian, and Philippine forces too. Buzzing planes, firing flares, cutting across noses at close range. Each one of those moves is a tiny roll of the dice with someone's life. In Washington, the incident lands on the desks of people who think in patterns. China radar locks Japanese jets near Okinawa. China and Russia run a joint bomber patrol between Okinawa and Miyako, forcing Japan and South Korea to scramble fighters. China steps up drills around Taiwan. It all connects. The US Defense Secretary and Japan's Defense Minister get on secure calls. Publicly, they talk about shared concern and unwavering alliance. Privately, the language is blunter. If they keep doing fire control radar lock-ons, somebody's going to overreact, one senior official says. We need to make it painfully clear where the red line is, before a pilot decides for us at 30,000 feet. A few days later, the answer arrives. Not as a press release, but as two B-52 bombers cruising over the Sea of Japan, flanked by Japanese F-35s and F-15s in a very visible show of force. The US and Japan announced the flight as routine strategic bomber training, but everyone knows the timing isn't an accident. For viewers on the ground, it's just contrails in the sky. For anyone watching from Beijing, it's a reminder. If you push Japan, you get the United States for free. Behind closed doors, US officials take it further. They quietly pass a message through diplomatic and military channels to China. Radar lock-ons on Japanese aircraft are now treated as a serious provocation, not just unsafe behavior. If it keeps happening, expect more bomber patrols, more joint drills, more deployments. In other words, you might think you're pressuring Japan, but you're tightening the US-Japan alliance instead. In Tokyo's secure situation rooms, planners update their playbooks. The next time a radar warning screams in a cockpit near Okinawa, the response may not just be a protest. They discuss new rules of engagement, still cautious, still designed to avoid war but sharper. If a Chinese jet uses fire control radar again, Japanese fighters will announce it instantly on recorded channels, shadow the offender more aggressively, bring US jets into the picture faster. They won't fire, but they won't shrug either. Japan also boosts its early warning coverage, adds more patrols, and accelerates integration with US command and control, so that any dangerous maneuver is seen, recorded, and answered as a joint problem, not a solitary Japanese complaint. Meanwhile, Chinese and Russian bombers continue their joint patrols near Japan. On one such flight, two 95s and H-6 bombers rumble through the air, escorted by Chinese J-16 fighters. Japan and South Korea scramble jets to shadow them, flares cutting across the sky as aircraft maneuver in tight formations over cold water. Every plane up there carries missiles. Every cockpit carries a human being with a split second to decide what a lock means. One Japanese pilot launched to intercept the joint patrol glances at his threat warning gear. No fire control radar this time, just search radar, just normal tracking. He still feels tension in his neck and shoulders, but it's a different kind of tension, because he knows that somewhere out there a line was drawn. If you use that fire control switch again, the response won't be an editorial. It'll be steel and jet fuel. Back on the ground, Japanese newspapers and TV panels chew over the radar incident. Some commentators say Japan should respond harder, send more jets, more ships, more aggressive intercepts. Others warn that overreacting could give Beijing exactly what it wants, a chance to paint Japan as the reckless one. One editorial sums it up like this: China is testing Japan's nerves. The real test is whether Japan can respond firmly without handing Beijing the crisis it wants. In Beijing, propaganda organs spin a different story. They show footage of Japan's Prime Minister talking about Taiwan. They accuse Tokyo of returning to militarism, remind viewers of World War II, and insist that Chinese forces are only defending their rightful training areas. They do not mention fire control radar. They do not talk about red lines. But military planners in China read the same radar logs as everyone else. They know someone on their side decided to flip that switch, and that it got the world's attention. Was it worth it? In one sense, yes. They proved they're willing to push. In another sense, maybe not. Because instead of splitting Japan from the US, the incident triggered more joint drills, more bomber flights, and more talk in Washington about backing Tokyo if a Taiwan crisis spills north. As always in these stories, the people with the least control are the ones making the split-second decisions. The pilots, the radar operators, the commanders watching green symbols crawl across a screen at 2 in the morning. Somewhere over the East China Sea, a Japanese F-15 and a Chinese fighter pass within visual range again. This time there is no radar lock. They circle, they photograph, they shadow, they turn away. The Japanese pilot glances at the warning panel. No red light, no angry tone, for now. He thinks about that night when the light did turn red, when for a few seconds his jet was technically a valid target. He thinks about the B-52s that flew alongside his country's fighters a few days later. He thinks about how every future war game over Taiwan now contains a chapter labeled, "What if someone flips that radar switch again?" Then he turns for home. The sea below looks calm. The horizon is quiet. But between the lines on his radar screen, the new reality is already written. China will keep testing Japan. Japan will keep calling in the United States. And somewhere, an invisible red line now stretches across the sky, drawn not with ink or treaties, but with one dangerous click of a radar knob and the message that followed: "Don't do that again."